Chances of a nuclear detonation in the coming 30 days are 51%. Chances of NATO folding are 49%. Chances of a nuclear exchange are 33% and getting worse. They're no longer measuring the time to midnight on the nuclear clock in minutes. It's now down to seconds. It's bad, and mankind is getting ready to destroy themselves.
Has World War III started? A lot of people are asking questions like the world is coming to an end, Gog and Magog, nation fight against nation. What in the world is going to happen? Everyone's talking about it, and we're going to be talking about it today. Our guest today is an investigative journalist, historian, award-winning New York Times best-selling international author. A mouthful. His name is Edwin Black. He's wearing black, looks fantastic. He holds 11 award-winning best-selling books. Here's a list. IBM and the Holocaust, Financing the Flames, British Petroleum, and the Redline Agreement, and the war against the weak. Are we witnessing that today? Well, today he'll be talking to us about the real threat of Russian-Ukrainian war turning into World War III. Tamar, great show ahead of us. Guys, welcome to the show. And Edwin, thank you also for joining the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be with Tamar Yonah and her friends.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Rod, and welcome. It's great to have you on, Edwin. We have a lot to talk about today. And, you know, as Rod said, everybody now is talking about it. Is this World War III or the beginning of it? And will it go nuclear? We don't know, but we can look at some of the different aspects of what's going on, who's motivated, who's not motivated, and other intrigues, I should say. So let's start out with something that has been bothering me, and that is the media coverage. And again, the media telling people what to think and showing and censoring what they don't want us to see. As you know, RT News, which is Russia Today News, has been banned and censored from Western countries. So people in the quote unquote free West are able to watch whatever they want, right? But no, we can't. We have been banned. We have seen Russian news agencies, whether they're propagandists or not, they've been banned, and we don't have the privilege to be able to watch and make up our own minds about that. And that bothers me, because I want to hear what the other side is saying. Even if it's lies, I will distinguish, I will look. So now what the media is doing is, I've noticed in different channels, they're all using the same word to describe Vladimir Putin. He's erratic, crazy, he's insane. And it's like they want to put this in our heads. And I see him as a very methodical type of person, not erratic at all, very dangerous person as well. I'd like to know what you think about all of this.
Well, that's a lot of stuff rolled up into one, and let me try to segment it out. First, I'll answer your first question. We are in World War III today now at this moment, and have been. It was not up to the Archduke in Sarajevo to say, oh, I've been shot and now we're in World War I. It was not up to my father in Poland to say, well, we just had a blitzkrieg here. I guess we're in World War II. The United States didn't even enter the war until they were bombed in December 1941. So we're in World War III right now. Let's move in, and then we'll granulate as we go forward. Let's look at some of your other questions about banning RT and enemy media or despised media. We can't do that. You have to understand that a guy like me who wrote IBM and the Holocaust, War Against the Weak, The Far Hood. I got an enormous amount of my material from the Stürmer, from various Nazi publications. So you need that stuff because you need to evaluate what are they saying, what are they thinking. There's always reality and the perception of reality. So we need all the negative and antithetical and despised media to hear what their messages are. So that should not be done. And this type of activity is going to be plaguing historians for years to come, and it's plaguing us because we don't know what their messaging is. And that's part of the problem. They don't know what we're saying. We don't know what they're saying. And all that does is continue the conflagration. Now, is Putin nuts or is he not nuts? That is the question. So either he's nuts for real, and a lot of people who know him say, well, he's not the guy I knew. Trump has said he's not the guy I knew. The French president has said he's not the guy I knew. Others are saying he's not the guy I knew. Or is he just want us to think he's nuts? And which is a tried and true Russian tactic, especially when it comes to negotiation. You know, the way the Russians negotiate is they say, all right, we'll do this, that, and that. And then when you think you're wrapped up, oh, we changed our mind on this. And they keep people off base about that. He immediately went to nuclear from the outset. He advanced his nuclear games, which were supposed to be in August. He advanced them to be done with Belarus just prior to the invasion. As soon as there was difficulty, he spoke about putting his forces, upping his DEFCON level. And I'm not sure if we have also mimicked his DEFCON level. I know that NATO's been moving nuclear equipped missiles through Ireland on their way to other facilities in the British Isles, and from Northern Ireland rather into the British Isles. Then Lavrov said that World War III will be a nuclear war. So we must understand that World War I was the first mechanized war. World War II was the first industrialized war. And World War III will be a nuclear war. We don't have it now, but it's going there. And nuclear war means different things to different people, to different perpetrators, and to different victims.
I just want to say here that they say World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones.
Probably.
After a nuclear war. Yeah, okay.
That's probably. And remember, the Stone Age was not done because they ran out of stones. So if you look what Lavrov said, he said that World War III will be nuclear. And then what happens? We see a lot of chatter about the known fact that nuclear doctrine in Russia, military doctrine in Russia calls for a nuclear escalation in order to de-escalate. So we're talking about a first use doctrine. That first use will probably be tactical battlefield use. It could be several kilotons, about the size of Hiroshima or less. And we also had that same nuclear doctrine back during the Cold War, when if 3,000 tanks came across Germany at Fulda Gap, then our express policy was a first use of tactical nuclear bombs to delay the Russians. So he's talking about tactical nuclear. And then what did he do earlier this week? He used a hypersonic missile that goes 5 times the speed of sound to hit what I would consider to be an ordinary target in Western Ukraine, right near NATO. And it was with a conventional HE explosive, high explosive warhead. He didn't need to do it, but he did it to show us, not because Biden said he's desperate, he's up against the wall. He did it to show us that my nuclear equipped, my nuclear capable hypersonic missile, which you cannot thwart, is now battlefield tested and ready to go. Now, whether the range is 1,200 miles or whether it's 2,000 miles, depends upon where it's dropped. So if he has a forward airplane, a forward bomber, it can be dropped from anywhere in the western reaches. It can even be dropped from the Arctic. In addition to that, the Russian doctrine is now to deploy its stealth nuclear tipped and nuclear powered torpedo, which is non-ballistic, meaning it doesn't go like that, like you see in the movies. It basically, it can go out into the Atlantic. It can go down to the South Atlantic. It can go in circles and then strike. And when it strikes, it would launch an underwater nuclear explosion, which would create a tsunami for the sole purpose of devastating a coastal city such as Galveston, Miami, could be Guam, could be it could be the Virgin Islands, could be Puerto Rico, any of that stuff. And this is another typical warning shot. So I think we're going to see a warning shot. Now, we have these same tactical weapons, some of them. We don't have hypersonics. Years ago, I was in Michigan telling people that that Russia was developing hypersonic nuclear tipped missiles and telling them that this day was coming. We don't have that, but what we do have is a very explicit list of pronouns now that we use in the US military. Everybody's got 12 different options of a pronoun instead of 12 different bombs that can be sent off on a hypersonic voyage. So all of this can occur. We have suitcase nuclear bombs. They're about this big. We have nuclear cannons, cannon shells. There was once an attempt to make a nuclear grenade. We have the Davy Crockett, which is basically a big fat nuclear bomb that goes on to a rocket launcher that can be carried on your back. We have all of this. So the question is, when does this happen? I think soon. I would love for Tamar to call me up in a year and say, see, you were wrong. Please, Tamar, call me in a year and tell me I was wrong, because
Happily.
we're very close to Poland. And our guy Biden has stated, well, we're going to defend every inch of NATO territory. Well, what does that mean? What kind of an inch are you talking about now? It's what the definition of is. So they're already just a little bit off of the NATO border. There could be a miscalculation. There could be debris. There could be a convoy attacked. There could be a missile gone astray. And then you need to look at proliferation of a multi-front war. I did a show on that before as well. And that means that at the very moment that this war is unfolding, China could make an effort to move against Taiwan. North Korea could take advantage of the situation, and Israel will probably have to take off on a nice moonless night and take care of the threat to the north. So we could really have a situation that is a genuine World War III. I first suggested World War III back when Afghanistan fell, knowing that that would happen. I then scheduled a World War III show on the Edwin Black Show. You can hit me on Thursdays at 3 p.m. at theedwinblackshow.com. I know that Tamar was dying for me to give a plug to my show. And I scheduled that show for April. And I moved it up to last week, which Tamar saw, because I think the threat is real. And I talked about surviving, not surviving, blast radius, and what we can expect in a nuclear war. So I hope I've started our conversation off tomorrow
with a bang. Yeah, you did, with a bang. So I want to go back to the very beginning though and say, because before we talk about using nuclear weapons to win this war, maybe you can encapsulize very briefly why Russia started this invasion into the Ukraine, very briefly, just to give a background, because that will give the motives. And my following question that I have is that Russia most likely is going to win the war with Ukraine. They're stronger, and they're brutal. They don't care if they kill civilians, like Israel does. So while they can win the war, to hold on to the Ukraine is a completely different story, because the Ukrainians are fighters and they don't like occupation, and they will be not just a bone in the throat of Russia, but they're going to be fighting Russia for years and years and years. So while they can win the war, if they can hold on to Ukraine, that's a different story. So what is the motive of Russia?
Putin's motive is to restore the Russian Empire or the Soviet Union without a czar, without a Stalin, but with Putin, an authoritarian figure, at the head. There is no question that the cost of this war will be the Russian place in the world. Forget about the place of history, because like they say in the White House, because the history will be written by the victors and the survivors in their own way. But the place in the world, a world with the free exchange of goods and ideas, that place has now been damaged for a century. What Germany did to cause them to be reviled and to be outside the norms of humanity for generations, this has now been done by Russia and will continue to be done by Russia. And the Ukrainians themselves will revile Russia for generations to come. They will revile Russia in ways 1, 2, and 3 generations down, that the Jews can go to Nuremberg and to Hanover and to other parts of Germany and say, wow, this is a very pretty place. But back in their mind, they know that these are monsters who did what they did. And then we can have your discussion later about why should we help Ukraine in the first place, because I do want to help Ukraine in the first place, the second place, and the third place. So he did this to restore the Russian Empire, and he feels his role is historic, that he has done this, and that he will go down in history as standing up to all the opposition. But in 1, 2, 3 generations, there will be a new reality. And the new reality is one dominant empire in Europe and one dominant empire in Asia. Now, that reminds me of something that happened from 1933 to 1945, when the Axis came together. So we are in very perilous times. And what's your next question?
Well, you see, you were saying that Putin is doing this because he wants to make a name for himself and restore the great Russian Soviet empire. And I don't see this as just ego. I see this as, and I'm not defending Russia. I'm just saying what I see on each side here, that he feels threatened by NATO. Ukraine wanted to join NATO. NATO is getting very close to him, just like the United States didn't want missiles from Russia in Cuba next to the United States. Russia didn't want missiles and nuclear weapons, etc., from NATO in his backyard. So that's number one. I understand also geopolitically, he needs to protect his borders. Russia is not a very strong country. Their population is weak. They're not having as many children. And they have to fight, Europe and NATO, et cetera, et cetera. That's one thing I see. And on the other hand, where you're saying that Putin is this dictator and he doesn't allow freedom, I'm looking at what's happening right now in the Ukraine. And I know that, while my heart goes out to the victims in the Ukraine, and I have compassion for them, and I pray for them because it's a horrible thing what is happening. I think of these mothers and children in the cold and the snow, walking because they don't have a home anymore, and they don't even know where they're going to, and they have to sleep in subways and for protection. It's a terrible thing what's happening there. But on the other hand, I look at their leader. Everyone's making Zelensky some type of messiah or some type of super rock star. And he has now taken over all of the media, put it under the umbrella of the government. He doesn't allow political discourse in his country. He banned the opposition. And again, the media he took under his umbrella. He controls the entire media now. So I don't see where that is a free Western type of democracy ideology or value system there.
Okay, let's talk about it. There's so much to unwrap there. First of all, you had an excellent observation, and you made sense when you said that Putin is feeling as threatened as Kennedy was threatened with the Cuban Missile Crisis. And what has happened? The Soviet Union fell apart, and there was all this effort to expand NATO, and there was a big to-do, a verbal to-do, a visible to-do about having Ukraine, after Poland, join the NATO alliance. And what does that mean? That means nuclear missiles on the border. That means no one's got to fly 1,000 miles to get to Russia anymore. They can just walk across with a hand grenade. And this, yes, made him feel threatened. And the West deliberately took the opportunity not to create buffer zones and non-aligned zones, but to get all of his neighbors to join NATO and further threaten the guy. So from his point of view, he's saying, A, I'm threatened, and when I'm threatened, I'm a bear, and they're starting to poke the bear. That's just on that side. Now, let's get to your comment about Zelensky.
And just to add on top of that, he sees now his chance because he sees who's the president of the United States. He's not there. And we saw what happened with Afghanistan. He sees a weakling, and this is his chance.
Well, that's right. What he's saying is this: oh, it'll be bad for a little while. Then people will want my energy. We're going to look at Afghanistan. On Monday, we're out of there, and on Tuesday, they're getting millions of dollars. And I can play hardball with the best of them. And on top of that, he has now got 2 additional partners. He's got China, which is using their version of the SWIFT international exchange to process his money. And now he's got this secret clause, which is not secret, of course, anymore, that he'll have an escape valve on the current sanctions, Russia will, through Iran, on the Iran nuclear deal. So Iran will be the bagman and the money launderer for all these Russian transactions. On top of that, before you start saying things like blocking Russian oil and things like that. You may have noticed that when you pour oil out of a barrel, it doesn't glow and say Russia on it. So all oil, good, bad, and otherwise, can go to the Amsterdam spot market. It can be exchanged and purchased in the middle of the ocean with tankers that are one day carrying Saudi oil, and the next day that oil has been exchanged for Russian oil. There are lots of different things. Saudi Arabia already is so unhappy with this situation that they are accepting the Chinese yuan as a replacement for US money. We have to face the fact, and Putin knows this, and Xi knows it, that the United States is no longer the dominant superpower in the world. That's just a fact.
Right.
And so now let's get to your comment about Zelensky. First of all, Zelensky has got a 9/11 going on every hour of every day. He's being attacked left and right. He's the new Churchill. Yes, he's the new Churchill. Hey, I've seen his comedy. I'm watching it right now, Servant of the People. I know what I'm watching it with the English subtitles. I know what he was. But let me tell you something. All you people tipping your hat to Churchill, you don't know what Churchill was. I mean, the things that Churchill did, and I'm a huge admirer of Churchill. Churchill sent tens of thousands into Gallipoli. It was Churchill who invented this other thing called Jordan, with a memo to the League of Nations when Jordan was invented. He invented Jordan. And I know what the Ukrainians did. I know that the Holocaust of bullets was executed not in Poland, and it was not executed in Vienna. It was executed in Ukraine. And all those pictures we have of the Jews being shot in those pits, they're
Babi Yar.
Ukrainian.
Yeah.
And Babi Yar and more. And I know that when the Einsatzgruppen went out there, it was 3 guys from Germany and 100 guys from the Ukraine. I
Yes.
know about all that.
Yes.
So that's my war with their grandfathers. Not today. So understand what the hell is going on. And the fact that he has nationalized the media, so what? He's under bombardment. You want to know about nationalized media? I invite you to a place called the United States of America, where no one, you think you can't mention the word war and invasion in Russia. You couldn't mention the word Hunter Biden and laptop in the same sentence last year. You were banned, you were Twittered out, you were Facebooked out.
Censored, yes. Yes.
You were censored. And I also know that we had a censorship board in the United States during wartime. Let's look at what is happening today. And what is happening today is this guy is doing his best from the rubble to survive minute to minute. And so he's going to come into the United States and say, I have a dream. I get it. He's going to come into Israel and say, I'm a Jew and I get it. He's probably going to go into France and say, I like goat cheese and wine. He's going to do whatever he can to survive the hour.
Okay.
Period.
All right. Okay. Let's move on.
How was that?
I don't know if I agree with you or not. I don't know enough about it, but my impression is that he's not necessarily a rock star just because the media says so. I do know that in UN votes, Ukraine recently is always condemning Israel. I don't see Ukraine as a friend.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
All right.
And
let me just read you.
But right now, just a second.
Yeah.
I am looking not at what happened 100 years ago. I'm not looking at what happened 100 months ago.
Okay.
I'm not actually looking at 100 days ago. What I'm looking what happened 100 hours ago.
This is a wonderful segue to this. I'm going to read you this news report that just came out. It was just on Tucker Carlson as well, though I saw this before. I saw it on Tucker Carlson. And it says here that first of all, I want to say also that the Nazi Party in the Ukraine is one of the biggest, I think it's the second or no, maybe the third largest party or something in the Ukraine. But listen to this. The Nazis used the same formula in the Holocaust, and that is that this Ukrainian doctor tells the television in a video here that he gave an order to castrate Russian soldiers. It says here, Gennady Druzenko, 49 years old, told Ukraine 24 channel that he gave the order to castrate Russian soldiers. That's today. That's this week. This is not from 100 years ago or 100 days ago. So the Nazis are alive and well.
Wait a minute. Who is this guy?
He is, you know what? I don't have the article in front of me, but I will send you the link if you can look at it.
That I wrote a book about castration and eugenics, War Against the Weak. Who is this guy you're citing, Gennady? What's his title?
I will send you the link. It just says he's
send it to me. Tell me now.
Let's see here. He's a Ukrainian doctor, tells TV interviewer he has ordered his staff to castrate Russian soldiers. And I have the link and I'll send it to you, but I don't have the article in front of me.
All right,
I do want to move on, and everybody can check it for themselves, by the way. You know what? I'll even try to put the link on where the show's podcast is.
Castration, organized castration is a war crime under the Genocide Treaty.
Okay, well, you know, Ukraine has done a lot of war civilian
There's no
crimes.
question about that. There's no question about that.
All right.
I'm not defending Ukraine, but I am defending the innocents.
I want to get to nuclear war, but before we do that, before we bring it to the height of the height, I want to talk to you about the repercussions that the world may be seeing now because of this war. We understand that the breadbasket of Europe is Ukraine, Russia, and now, even if the war were to end today, we are going to see shortages of grain, and that means all the products with it, because they haven't had a chance to plant this year and last year to get things ready because of the war. Even if it ended today, we're going to see shortages. Yes. I want to ask you also about petrol shortages. I want you to ask you also about the finances. You were just saying before that they're talking about tanking the dollar, not using it anymore as the petrol currency, and going to the Chinese, what was the Chinese yen you said? And that's, sorry?
Yuan.
Okay, thank you. And that's going to destroy the dollar. Everyone's savings that have been saving and has any cash, I mean, that's the end of the dollar. That's the end of the United States of America as, like you said, a superpower, even though they're technically not really a superpower anymore. But I mean, everything is going to collapse. So financing, hunger, world hunger, petrol, etc. Where do you see all this going? Not even talking about a nuclear war.
It's exactly what you just said. Well, we started out with, it's World War III. World War III is not just a collapse of concrete buildings. It's a collapse of society. It's a collapse of the world order. It's a collapse of economic systems. It's a collapse of food production. I mean, if you study what one nuclear bomb could do, even a small nuclear bomb, a kiloton bomb in a city, 3 such nuclear bombs, small ones, not Tsar Bomba, which is 100 megaton, which has to be dropped from a parachute. But if you take something like a hypersonic missile delivery system, 3 of those could take out an entire city like Chicago. 1 would devastate Chicago if it were small. But remember, when you're talking nuclear bombs, you're talking about where did the bomb drop and how big is the bomb and what is the weather condition that the bomb was detonated in. And remember, a bomb can also be detonated on the ground without missiles in a truck. It can be detonated in a briefcase. So the point is, I don't know how many of you know the layout of Washington, D.C. If you dropped it on the White House, then it would impact and destroy an area about 10 miles out. First, you have the blast, which will vaporize everything within about 3 to 5 miles, depending upon size and wind. Then you have the blast radius, which will burn everything at 300 times the temperature of cremation. It'll burn buildings, it'll burn skin, hair, and then you have the radioactive fallout, and then the fact that you'll have to be in a bunker for 2 weeks to let the radioactive stuff settle. And then there'll be a question of water, food, your cell phone's not going to work, there'll be no society. The only people who will be able to rescue you will be relief forces from 100 miles away. So let us say that there is only one such exchange. And the traditional thought is that it would hit Omaha first, because Omaha is the home of the Strategic Air Command. I realize it's governed out of Cheyenne Mountain, but the point is the airplanes are sitting up in Omaha. That does not mean if Omaha goes that we don't have first and second strike capability, because we absolutely do. But it could be Omaha, it could be Washington, it could be a test somewhere in the middle of the New Mexico desert. It could be a hypersonic missile. We don't know, underwater. We don't know what it's going to be, but it will be the collapse of societies. Look what happened when they took 2 buildings down in New York City on September 11th. The whole country ground to a halt. So war disables all progress, all enjoyment, all life. And the bigger the war, the bigger the disruption.
Why would they
Next
hit the
question.
United States? I mean, you would think that they would hit maybe Western Ukraine, or I don't know, some target that is as far away from Russia as possible. Why would they go directly to the United States to hit?
Wind.
Come again? Explain.
Wind.
Wind.
Wind. When you drop a nuclear bomb, you have radiation. So if you're gonna, you have fallout. So the wind goes in a certain direction, and if you drop it near you, you're going to irradiate and impact your own people, and that's not something that you want to do. Anyway, his adversary here is not Ukraine with nuclear weapons, because Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons. They were the third largest nuclear power in the world. His adversary is the United States. The rest of Europe, rest of NATO will collapse without the United States. And right now, let me tell you something. Putin is angry, he's desperate, and he's in a retaliatory mood. And every time you throw a knife at Putin, he answers back with a cannon. That's how it is. He brings a cannon to the knife fight. And what do we bring into the knife fight? Pronouns.
Sanctions, pronouns, right? Very good. So
look, the sanctions are doing nothing. We've got hundreds of corporations doing sanctions. Even IBM, which organized the Holocaust, has suspended their activity from Russia during this time. Although we should remember that it was IBM that organized the Russian nuclear arsenal with 13 supercomputers. But anyway, what's your next question?
So I'm glad that you answered it the way you did, because I've heard people say that this is not a war between Russia and Ukraine. It's a war between Russia and the United States. So you pretty much encompassed that in your answer, and that would make
I don't
sense.
think that that's absolutely correct.
Okay.
I think that it's that there's a war objective, and the faltering opponent is the United States and NATO. The objective was not to fight the United States so that they could get a bridgehead into Miami Beach, where I'm sure they have many nightclubs, but the idea was to take over more of Europe, and and the enemy of that, the adversary of that, is NATO and the United States. I'd like to add another thing here. What we're seeing now is this desire to turn back the clock to 1945, when Russia had sway over all of Europe. It's the same thing that the Arabs are trying to do. They're trying to turn things back to 1945. Everybody is deciding on their own measuring stick what they will recognize and not recognize in terms of land. World War I brought the United States into World War I because of the Zimmerman telegram, which promised the Mexicans that if they went to war with us, they could take back the southern United States territories that came to the U.S. after the Mexican-American War, the Treaty of Hidalgo, 1848, which took half of Mexican territory. The pictures are big, the understanding is narrow, but everybody is now going to learn the penalty for not understanding geography and history, especially in the United States.
I want to read you an article that came out. Oh my goodness, I hope I still have it here. Because it talks about Israel and where Israel stands in this. Here, I have it here. Very interestingly, Naftali Bennett, the present prime minister of Israel, has he's ran to see Putin. He ran to Germany. It was on the Sabbath, in fact, to make it very urgent and emergency. And they're talking now about having Jerusalem being the place for peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. I want to read you this. This is from someone named Lee Smith, who wrote in Tablet magazine. And it says here, in the case of Ukraine, blaming the Jews might seem like a stretch. The Jewish state is a regional power in a region far from the Ukraine. But senior Capitol Hill sources told Tablet that the Biden administration is trying to put Israel in the line of fire by pushing Jerusalem to mediate between Kiev and Moscow. The point is to position Israel to catch the blame if Putin doesn't relent or the stubborn Ukrainians prove unwilling to surrender enough territory to end the war on terms that the Russian president finds acceptable. I found that very interesting, that here's a good third party to blame things on. If Israel does hold peace talks and it collapses, easy to blame the Jews. What do you think?
Well, that would be something new, blaming the Jews for war. I mean, it's an innovation that I haven't seen this year. But remember, World War I was blamed on the Jews. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion and Henry Ford blamed World War I on the Jews. World War II was blamed on the Jews. Those are different long stories. And of course, I wrote a book involving Henry Ford and his Protocols of the Elders of Zion and his involvement. This is something you and I have to live with every day. But what we don't want to live with is a guy in the White House governed by a political party that would blame the Jews for everything, for the war, for the weather, probably for Jewish lasers coming from outer space. I think that's being done now by a Republican. In fact, I have my Jewish Laser Force arm patch, so I'm ready to go. So we're accustomed to this. Why? Because Jews have been blamed for the Black Plague, for poisoned wells, for the death of Christ, for World War I, for money shortages, media manipulation. Henry Ford blamed the Jews for taking the chocolate chip cookies out of chocolate chip cookies. The chocolate
The
chips
Jews are
out of the
communists,
cookies.
the Jews are capitalists. The Jews
That's
are
right. Yeah, the Jews are cosmopolitan, cosmopolitanism, Zionism, socialism, Nazism, all the isms. We got all of the isms. We thought that the White House, the Democratic Party, which is governed by extreme Jew haters in a minority, but a governing minority, would have enough seichel to rise above that. You know, I just published an edited episode on the Edwin Black show called Entrenched Anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party. And so they will blame the Jews for everything, for high prices at the gas pump, for anything going on in Hollywood, for economic shift, for climate change. Probably they will blame iceberg, because they say, look at Goldberg, Silverberg, now it's iceberg, and everything is melting. So so we've got it, but don't be surprised at this. This is something, these are Magen Davids that we have to bear. Next.
Okay, let's talk about the spreading of the conflict. It's an opportunity, just like we saw Putin sees how weak America is with Afghanistan. He goes in, he took the Crimea before, and people yelled and screamed, and then nothing. And he sees he can swallow this as well, Ukraine. This might be a good time now, as you said before, that China goes in to take Taiwan, and Israel may go in and take out the nuclear facilities in Iran. What do you think's where does Iran play in this picture?
Well, first, let's go with what Putin's going to take next. He's going to take Moldova. And remember, when Putin controls, after Odessa, when Putin controls the northern rim of the Black Sea, the southern rim of the Black Sea is the Bosporus. And the Bosporus empties out into North Mediterranean. So that's quite a bit. So he's going to take that. He's arming the Russian enclave, extraterritorial enclave in the Baltic Sea called Kaliningrad or Kaliningrad, depending upon who you're talking to. And so I think that it will be very easy for him to start nibbling out pieces of Poland and Poland, Finland, Estonia, Lithuania. Remember, when Russia went into Estonia, they took thousands of people and sent them into concentration camps and worked them to death. And I understand that's happened. They're starting that now. We see the first glimmers of grabbing people and sending them to forced labor camps. That sounds like gulags to me. So that can happen, and I think we will see it happen. Then someone in the White House will say, well, it's every inch of NATO, but what kind of inch are we talking about? And was it an accidental inch? Is it a consequential inch? Whatever it is. And so that's what he's doing next. What was the second part of your question?
You know what I'd like to do, because it's running late, I'd like to open it up for our listeners. Rod, maybe you want to put yourself back on spotlight, and you want to, are there any questions from our listeners for Edwin Black?
At this time, no, there isn't. Let's see.
There was one, and I was wondering it myself, and that was what if Russia uses an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse nuclear bomb up in the air, so the buildings and the people necessarily aren't killed, you know, ground zero, but all the communications go out, all the cars and computers and everything.
All right. So first of all, I did remember the second part of your question. What happens with Iran? I think you mean when does it happen, not what happens.
Very nice.
So you can have me back after that takes place. As to the EMP bomb is in the arsenal of the Russians, along with cyber warfare. Apparently, mil-spec is supposed to harden the circuits. That's not going to happen because they still have cars, they still have vehicles, they still have interfaces from here to there. Things are going to fry, and so that is part of their armamentarium, is to employ EMP bombs, which can take out everything but leave the buildings. So they have a range of disabling weapons. We have the same range of disabling weapons. It really all comes down to this. Putin was in his cage. The world is filled with madmen. The madmen are kept in their cage for various reasons, the main one being strength. We had strength. Strength disappeared in January of 2021. And as a result of that, Putin left his cage. He met the other crazy guys. And now the world is going to see the consequences. Now, as far as your listeners not having questions, hey guys, come on. What's your question?
Okay.
Well, we have one comment. We
Okay.
have one comment that the person that you were referring to about castrating Russian soldiers was Gennady Drazenko. He was told Ukraine 24 to give order to castrate the soldiers. So anyway,
all right,
that's one.
Yeah,
and
okay.
we've got what does the speaker think of Elon Musk's relationship with Ukraine and Russia?
I think Elon Musk is one of the world's most advanced thinkers. And I think that he's playing a very active role as an independent billionaire. And the active role is he's putting his Starlink in, which is making the difference for communications, which is not something we will have when the EMP hits the United States. If it hits. And I think that Elon Musk has the ability to make a big difference to the Ukrainians, and I'm happy he is doing it.
Also, I want to mention, and I'm sorry, Tamar, I want to mention that go home and do your research, guys. These things are survivable events, but you're going to have to prepare. You have to do some thinking and preparation, food storage, whatever it may be. Just be smart. I mean, you don't have to panic. Just be smart, Tamar.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on what you were saying, Edwin, how strength helps prevent these evil people around the world to start these wars. And it says here, this is from I saw this on Yahoo News. It says Rudy Giuliani, why can't I read his name? Rudy Giuliani.
Try Giuliani.
Yes, says genius Trump threatened to blow up Putin's gold bubbles. Let me just read this. Giuliani said former President Donald Trump made an unusual threat to Russian President Vladimir Putin while he was in office. Trump reportedly said, Vladimir, you shouldn't attack Ukraine. I never liked those big, what are those things you got in Moscow, those big bubbles, those big gold bubbles? I never liked those things. So I'm going to have to blow them up. Giuliani told Newsmax. And basically he was referring to the Cathedral of the Annunciation, which is the Kremlin and has gold onion domes. It's a very famous pictures we see when we see Russia.
So the comment is, when one maniac talks to another, they talk the same language. Second of all, while Trump was a maniac, he was a maniac with very effective policies. And so he was a maniac to the plus, not to the negative. Third of all, Putin invaded during Bush, Obama, and Biden, but not under Biden. So whether, not under Trump is what I meant to say. So whether Trump threatened to take away his milk and cookies or blow up his church onion skin domes. Whatever Trump did, he kept Putin at bay. Remember, Trump said to Afghanistan, we're out of this, but remember this, one American dies, and I start dropping Moabs, the mother of all bombs. No one's going to breathe for 4 miles. And he dropped one to let them see what it would look like. And no one was shot. No one was killed. We have a disastrous foreign policy in the United States at a time when we need a strong foreign policy. I don't know what's going to happen in the next weeks and months, but I can tell you this. The world is sliding down, and on my show, the EdwinBlackShow.com, I am scheduling updates to World War III on a regular basis.
I want to ask you very quickly as well. Why is MAD, mutual assured destruction? Why is it weaker today? I mean, at one time it prevented, it held forces at bay. Why now is it different? Why do you think that MAD is not going to be deterrence?
MAD is not going to be a deterrent now because one of the parties to MAD is mad. That's Putin. And when you're already mad, that mutually assured destruction is not what it was 5-10 years ago. Second, we have the Ayatollahs who are planning to attack Israel with 5 apocalyptic nuclear bombs, nuclear missiles, to actually bring about the end of the world and usher in the Mahdi. We have the Chinese who could lose 1 million people next Thursday and wouldn't barely know it. And they could lose 5 million, and they're already trying to kill 1 million of their own, of the Uyghurs. So the fact of the matter is, they're not affected by MAD. They're separated by the entire ocean. And we have North Korea, where he's not only mad, he's feeling lonely. So he feels that the best way for him to conduct himself is to disregard MAD. So this is why MAD is not going to work. Let me say something to Rod Bryant here of Houston, Texas. Nice place. You said these wars are survivable. These nuclear exchanges are survivable. Here's the answer. There's 3,000 counties in the United States. If it hits your county, it's not survivable. If it hits somebody else's county, it is survivable. So
right.
if it hits, let me tell you something. We could see a nuclear exchange where all the advanced civilizations are gone, and only Pakistan and India decide not to exchange nuclear weapons. We could see a reordering of society, just like we saw a reordering of the world, where Europe was now dependent upon the United States for the Marshall Plan. So if Washington goes, if Houston goes, if Miami goes, all these places go, who's going to be running the world? Well, it could be people in Mexico. It could be people in Wyoming.
But don't you think in some way this is kind of what the oligarchs and the people in charge behind the scenes really want to reset? This is what it appears to me. It's like, hey, bring on a new war. It doesn't hurt me.
Oligarchs don't want resets. They want oligarchy. There's a difference.
Yeah, I get that.
Nobody can operate their super yacht in a sea of flames. What they want to do is just keep collecting. Now, the one thing you said that was completely correct is the same thing that I embrace. You must be prepared, because we're in that blast radius. We're in that radiation zone. Will you be 30 miles away? Will you be 10 miles away? Will you be 2 miles away? If you're 2 miles away, your only remnant will be a shadow. It will vaporize everything.
We had a philosophy during the Gulf War that if Saddam Hussein lobbed chemical weapons and we saw it hit out in the desert, we just run to it, because there are just some things you're not going to survive But the whole point is if the conditions are right, it can be survivable. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure you would want to survive because the conditions could be. You'd probably think the people that died would be better. Let me ask you this. Dennis said this or wants to ask, as the war drags on, what do you think would be the trigger? Putin is isolated, and reports are that some in Russia want him gone, a coup or assassination. What do you think on that?
I do think that there are people who want him gone. I do think he's arrested a number of his own top intelligence officers lately. I do think he's isolated, and I do think he's not going to go unless he slips on a banana peel in a way people have slipped in the Kremlin many times over previous generations, or if there's a big military boo-boo and some airborne missile accidentally hits his locality. But there's people trying to kill him. There's people trying to kill the president of the United States. If there's a nuclear exchange, he's not going to be sitting in the East Room. He's going to be sitting in Mount Weather in Virginia, about 300 feet below the ground,
In a bunker,
in a bunker.
Right. So, we've been talking about the possibility of nuclear war. I just want to ask you to sum everything up. Do you think we're going to go there? What do you think is going to happen?
It's bad. That's it. It's bad. You want me to put funny words on it? It's bad. It's getting worse. Chances of a nuclear detonation in the coming 30 days are 51%. Chances of NATO folding are 49%. Chances of a nuclear exchange are 33% and getting worse. They're no longer measuring the time to midnight on the nuclear clock in minutes. It's now down to seconds. It's bad, and mankind is getting ready to destroy themselves.
Where do you get these numbers from? 51%, etc.
I have a pad of paper here, and I write these things down.
I'm going to write.
Why did you ask me?
0%, okay?
0% for a nuclear detonation? Let me tell you something. When I was talking about World War III last year, nobody was talking about it. Now everybody was talking about it. Now you saw my show. You invited me here because I know what the hell I'm talking
I'm not
about.
predicting when I say 0. I'm being optimistic. I'm being positive thinking. I'm not predicting.
Baruch Hashem, I from your lips to the big guy's ears.
Yes,
I understand, but I'm telling you, we lost 5 million in 20 million people died in World War I, and nobody knows why. You don't have one scholar in Europe, in the United States, in Israel. You're sitting next to the Hebrew University who could tell me why World War I was fought. Russia itself lost 5 million. Russia lost 35 million with Stalin. They lost 20 million in the total of World War II. Losing millions is in their DNA. Over here, we have people who still are trying to figure out how to order a pizza from Pizza Hut by push the button on their telephone and are trying to cancel people for using the wrong pronoun. We are headed to a very, very bad place. And I'm hoping that exchanges like this can help us understand that we really need to live together in some way and avoid mass murder, mass death, and even perhaps another extinction event.
Well, I think that's why everybody's praying for the Messiah, whether you're in Iran, whether you're in Israel, whether you're in the United States, or whether you're a Christian in Europe or whatever. And we all have to remember whether there is a nuclear war or isn't. And I pray that there isn't, but there could be. I don't know. I just want to remind everybody that there's the one that's really in control. And we know how the story ends. In the end, it's all going to be good. It may be a very difficult ride until we get there, but and it may be very painful and ugly, but in the end, it's going to be good. And we know that There's the one above who's controlling everything, stronger than Putin, stronger than the left in Washington, stronger than all of these places. So I want to thank you very much, Edwin Black, for coming on the show. Edwin, you want to give out your website? It's edwinblack.com.
Well, my broken website for my books is edwinblack.com. But if you want to hear more about what I'm saying, go to my weekly show, including I have a show Thursday. On Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern, and I'm talking about replacing the United Nations, which is a worthless, hateful cesspool that
Corrupt.
was started by
Yes.
China and Russia. So you can go to theedwinblackshow.com,
All right.
theedwinblackshow.com, and I would tell you which of my books to buy, but there's too many of them. So I'll leave that to tomorrow.
So does that show stream onto the website on Thursday?
Yes, it goes
Okay.
live at 3 o'clock Eastern. Just enter the show. You can subscribe for alerts. You'll find out when we edit shows. And I'd like to thank Tamar for having me on.
Thank you.
Shalom, shalom. Take care, Edwin.
All right, there we go. Wow, that was a big punch, huh? Hey everyone, to make sure you can get access to all of our interviews, make sure to hit the subscribe button on both our YouTube and Rumble channels. Your click makes us all stronger. Thanks.